Welcome once again to SoCo Chat. I'm your host, Paul Gullickson, Communications Manager for the County of Sonoma. And in this segment, our topic is going to be the economy in Sonoma County and specifically the work of the county's Economic Development Board. We are very grateful to have as our guest today as Executive Director of the EDB, Ethan Brown. Before we talk to Ethan, we'd like to remind you all of our weekly trivia question. Our question this week is about Armstrong Redwoods, the state natural reserve just north of Guerneville. If you haven't been there, please check it out. This is where you can walk among some of the oldest and largest living things on the planet in these beautiful redwood grove. The question for today is, what is the oldest tree in the grove and who is it named after? If you know, call us at 707-565-2242. Once again, that's 565-2242. Or you can also email us at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. And be sure to include your name and phone number so we can get back to you and let you know if you won. This week's prize, once again, is one of our coveted SoCo Chat coffee mugs. So with that, let me get to Ethan. Ethan, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with an overview of the Economic Development Board of Sonoma County. Can you describe for our listeners what the organization does and what you do for them?
Absolutely. So we are a county department. We are focused really in three areas. The first, I think we're well known for, is business development, business assistance. So out there working with businesses to make sure that they can be successful and grow here in Sonoma County with the resources they need. The second area is in research. So we're also really well known for quite a few of the reports that we put out, whether it's general economic indicators, specific industry reports, reports on the transient occupancy tax, other things like that, special one-offs where we'll look at the economic impact of a particular event here in Sonoma County, things of that nature. The third area where we're just starting to emerge actually over the past year is in special projects and partnerships. So really diving in to understand what some of the challenges to economic development here are in Sonoma County, working with our partners, understanding where there might be gaps, whether those are resource gaps, knowledge gaps, data gaps, whatever that looks like, and helping to understand how we can play a part in that to be a resource to those organizations that are working on those issues.
Yeah. I want to back up. You mentioned the transient occupancy tax. It's the hotel tax that our local hotels charge. And that can be used as a great indicator as to, how well we're doing in terms of occupancy and tourism in our area, which is a huge part of our economy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, so how long has the EDB been around?
So believe it or not, since 1957.
Okay.
So back then it was known as the Industrial Development Board.
Okay.
It was the logo was smokestacks and buildings.
It's still on the county seal, I should note.
Yeah. So, but it shows you how far we've come, right? Where once, 70 some years, almost 70 years ago, there was a push for these smokestacks. Now we're much more of a homegrown sort of operation where we really look to help the businesses that are already here in Sonoma County as our primary driver.
So you mentioned that we're not after smokestacks anymore, but how else has the mission changed over the years since 1956?
Primarily we have always been an organization that's out there to work with local businesses, whether that's one-on-one with the local businesses or working with trade groups, partners such as chambers, our cities. I would say in terms of evolution, we're diving deeper into those partnerships, making sure we understand where we meet our partners where we are. Significantly, we have added a whole program that works with underserved communities, specifically monolingual Spanish speakers. We've added a division called Creative Sonoma that works specifically with creative businesses, creative endeavors to help support them. So that has been some evolution over time, and I think you've got a question in there later about.
I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about Creative Summer because I think I'm fascinated by that. But so you provide like small businesses, like people who are trying to start a business in town or a restaurant,
Yeah.
you can provide assistance. What kind of assistance can you provide them?
So whether you're looking to navigate the permit and licensing
Hmm.
environment, which you mentioned restaurants is specific to them, is can be fairly daunting.
Hmm.
So understanding, when you need a business license, when you need occupancy permits, when you need to interface with county health, um, maybe you need a beer and wine or a liquor license. We'll walk you through those
Help them get
processes.
through the system.
But it doesn't end there.
Hmm.
Most businesses, especially at the beginning, are looking for funding. They're looking at help creating a business plan. They're looking for workers. We can bring all of those resources to bear and connect with specific partners throughout the county that can help them take the next step.
Well, I know during COVID was a particularly challenging
Oh,
time
yeah.
for our small business operators, well, all business operators and restaurants. How were you involved in helping them during that time?
So a lot of, you'll recall, what was happening then was coming straight from the state.
Right.
And at first, it was sort of generalized, and then they started creating industry specific guidance. One of the things that we did, and I think we did it really well, was work with the local industry to create not only an understanding of what those rapidly changing guidelines meant to them and how to incorporate them, but also served as a sounding board to send that feedback back. What works in those environments may be different depending on what industry we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, in those early times when those closures started happening, that was sort of our bread and butter, was
Hmm.
just sort of, whether it was in a group setting or individually, working with businesses to help them stay operational. As the pandemic wore on, the Board of Supervisors allocated $2.5 million worth of CARES Act funding
Hmm.
to stand up a grant program. And so
Hmm.
we were fortunate enough to be able to manage that grant program with our partners in the Bay Area, Working Solutions, to put out grants between $2,500 and $15,000, depending on the size of the business.
Hmm.
It's important to remember the context of this was on the heels of more fires, and
Yeah.
floods, right? And in each of those successive disasters, businesses were offered loans from the SBA and others.
Yeah.
And by the time the pandemic came around, there was this aversion to taking on more debt, especially with such an unknown future ahead. So those grants were really important, and they came at a good time for local businesses.
Yeah. Well, it's remarkable how enduring our local business has been, our local economy, and so many of our places are still in operation. Now, I know many people are still recovering from those COVID years,
Yep.
still recovering from the fire years, and housing prices remain high, but overall things are looking fairly good from an economic perspective. I mean, our jobless rate is low, and we had UCLA economist Jerry Nicholsberg spoke recently at the Economic Development Board, your annual economic perspective breakfast at Sonoma State,
Mhm.
and he was projecting that with good job growth that we're going to see anticipated strong economic growth here in the county this year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, there's a lot to be happy about.
Hmm.
Right now, one of the things that Jerry Nicholsberg said that and the Fed has since echoed, and this is highly anticipated, is that we should start to see rates drop
Yeah, inflation.
here this year.
Yeah.
They're seeing positive signs with inflationary growth. Um, that's all. That's all cause for celebration. But one of the things that we really can continue to look at is on the inflation side, how that's affecting the consumer.
Hmm.
Consumers are making choices about where to live, what to spend their money on, that affect the population here in Sonoma County,
Hmm.
affect local retailers, affect restaurants, and so we're still seeing some of that reticence to get out there and spend because the basic needs are so much more expensive than they were a couple of years ago.
Right.
So that's there's again cause for celebration, but also cause to look and make sure that everybody's feeling that same.
Yeah. Well, it's heartbreaking. We still have new reports of longtime businesses, restaurants going out of business,
Yeah.
and they're retiring or they're just having a hard time making ends meet as it is. And there's still a lot of work to do to support them in this time. So, well, we know that you're about to go through a transition of your own at the EDB, and I believe it's called EDB 3.0. the collaborative. Could you give us a little hint as to what that's all about?
Yeah. So uh, EDB 3.0 was a working title, and I'll just explain what that signifies and how that may change over time. But it really is the third version of the EDB as we know it. The EDB for many years was really a one-man show. In 2011, and this probably goes back to your question about evolution, in response to the Great Recession, the Board of Supervisors invested in our department and created a number of professional positions to go out and work directly with the business community in response to what they were seeing from the recession. That was EDB 2.0.
Okay.
Now, in EDB 3.0, we look at a number of factors as they relate to economic development and as they affect our ability to create and maintain a vibrant economy here. One of those is certainly jobs and business development. That's always going to be a core focus of ours. But you also have workforce and education, and you have housing and community development. Those are interrelated factors that, or variables, if you will, that affect our ability here to maintain that economy I just spoke about. So if you can't afford, if there isn't access to affordable and aspirational housing for that matter, if there isn't access to an affordable education, or we aren't making linkages between that education and our economy here, then our businesses won't do well.
They're going to struggle, yeah.
Right? And this also comes after we've seen the successive disasters that we spoke about before, and we're seeing a large segment of our community here that's not able to recover from those in the same way as some others. So it's a recognition that economic development is that an important piece of economic development is working with those local businesses, but that's not where it starts.
Yeah, it's more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that where the collaborative comes from? I mean, we're looking at a name change here as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a number of steps we have to take. The Economic Development Board will become the Economic Development Collaborative. But that really sort of embraces the way that we're going to work. The way that the board has asked us to work is much more collaboratively, not only with our partners in the community, but with other county departments, with education, with our housing partners, and others.
So should we anticipate any change in services or the main things that you provide?
No, I think you'll see that, including that as one of those three pillars will really renew our commitment to local businesses, and the research side is really going to drive a lot of what we're looking at. We need to make sure that everything we do is data driven, and the special projects piece was really born of the born from the EDB 3.0 plan, knowing that there may be projects that need to be incubated and spun out, or there may need to be resources that are detailed out to other organizations so that they can start making progress on what they're working on.
Well, that's great. Well, one of your business services, your divisions, is known as Creative Sonoma.
Oh, yes.
I'm fascinated by this. And what does Creative Sonoma do, and how does it fit in the overall vision of the organization?
Sure. Well, to go
department?
way back in the history lesson, probably about 2013, we had a local arts council, and the arts council went away, and there was a sort of a leadership vacuum in the creative community. We put together an arts plan, put it before the Board of Supervisors. They approved it, and we created Creative Sonoma. Really, the impetus for that is to make sure that there is representation for the creative arts. You think of visual art, you think of performing art, that as when you think of the arts, right? But it's also your landscape architect, your interior designer, and other creative, your graphic designer, other creative pursuits are a fairly significant part of our economy here. So Creative Sonoma embraces that. They track the creative economy and endeavor to make sure that it has the strengths to survive, the economic ups and downs.
Yeah, well, I love it. You track that, and you even have a projection that was. I pulled this off of your last year's Sonoma County Indicators report, and you're projecting a 4% growth in the creative economy in Sonoma County over the next 5 years. What goes into that calculation?
So that is, again, that's that comes from the tie-in with tourism and the creative economy. It ties into everything from local wine brands using local artists to create labels and things of that nature. So it bodes well for the creative economy. I think it oftentimes we look at arts as a cultural thing versus an economical thing, and it can be both. And it's a
Yeah.
very important part of what we consider to be economic development.
Well, it's a recognition and I mean, to the robust arts community that we have,
Absolutely.
and like you said, it's a big tent, a lot of a definition. A lot of people fit in that category.
Mhm.
And does any other counties do this sort of a thing, or?
I can go by, well, I can say not many. I think we are one of the few counties that actually funds this on a permanent basis.
Okay.
I'll just tell you as an aside, we recently hired a new director, and most of the candidates that interviewed for that position were coming from nonprofits. And many of them told us, it's just amazing that a county's taking this on.
Right.
And it frees up the staff to be able to do the good work that
Yeah.
they need to be doing.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to talking more about that in the future. So, on the personal side, help our listeners get to know you a little bit more.
Sure.
Tell us about how you got to this position. What kind of background path did you take to get here?
How much time do you have, Paul? Folks at work often they kind of chide me a little bit because it seems like I've had a lot of different professional lives. But
Wow, that's diversity right there.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting story, and it's one that I think it's given me empathy for folks that I work with. I graduated high school here locally, Montgomery. I went on to the JC. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and I sort of treated the JC, unfortunately, like high school part two. And I also had a full-time job, and I just wasn't doing anything with my education that was moving me along. So I took a break, didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up going to a race car mechanics training school.
Oh, interesting.
From there, I ended up working on Indy cars for several years.
Fantastic.
And then
Where was this?
that was in primarily in St. Louis and in the Midwest, and then I moved back and worked with a team in Bakersfield, California. And even coming back to Bakersfield felt like coming home. Eventually, I made my way back up to Sonoma County. It was kind of, despite the fun in racing, I just wanted to be back. Through a series of connections and trying my hands at different things, a friend and I decided, and if you're out there, Tony, I'll give you some props. Fred and I decided to start a construction business.
All right.
And I think it was equal parts bravado and naivete,
Yeah.
but we were fairly successful. And I can't think of anything more rewarding than the business ownership experience.
You know that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working with clients, helping their visions come to life, being an employer. When you look at it on the whole, it's very rewarding. That being said, that business in particular is a very capital-intensive business.
Yeah, it's challenging.
And highly reactive to economic headwinds. And so in about 2009, as the recession was really ramping up, we sort of ran out of jobs and ran out of money. We found ourselves in a place of what are we going to do next, and decided to just fold it up. I had the opportunity to come home and tell my then fiance that I no longer had a business.
Great.
And she encouraged me to go back to school, which is something that I had mentioned I wanted to do for a long time. I ended up at SSU studying political science. And one of my professors there knew Ben Stone, who was the director of the EDB until 2019, and introduced me. And there happened to be an opportunity there working with local businesses to help them understand all of the regulatory requirements.
Right. And having been in that position, you had empathy for the kinds of things they were going through and how you might be able to help them.
That and the desire to, what studying political science did for me was give me a desire to serve. It didn't make me want to be a politician, but it gave me a desire to serve. And so to be able to mesh those two things together, we used to say out of the 210,000 jobs in Sonoma County, I might have landed on the one that was just kind of made for me.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, yeah.
Well, congratulations. Well, and you were just recently, I should note, you were just recently last year made the permanent director of this position.
Correct.
So we're excited for you. And given your background, that you're a local boy, gone through the local school system, the JC, Sonoma State, and cut your teeth in the business community, you seem to be the perfect person for this position.
I hope so. Thank you.
So what do you still keep your hand in building or construction? What do you do for hobbies and things for fun?
Well, yeah. The only time our house is almost 100 years old, so
that's a hobby.
Yeah, that keeps me swinging a hammer. But on the hobby side, because as my wife knows, that I don't consider that a hobby anymore. We like to be outdoors. We like to go camping. We take a big camping trip every year. Try to do that as much as possible. Throughout the rest of the year. We have animals, so we have goats, we have sheep. That keeps me busy. Just anything we can do to stay active and be outside.
How many acres do you have? A lot of property, or?
Yeah, we have just over 2.
Oh, that's great.
So
that's fine. Is there a particular place you like to go camping in Sonoma County?
In Sonoma County, it's always the coast.
Yeah, like Doran Beach or someplace.
Doran Beach, Bodega Dunes is a favorite of ours. That's nice and sheltered from the wind if you like that sort of thing. Always been trying to get to Wrights Beach, but it's a little bit smaller and it's tougher to get into.
It's tough to get in. Yeah, I know from experience.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm always probing everybody for their ideas of where's their go-to spot, where they like to escape to, because I want all these ideas so I can go go and take advantage of them.
I just shared all my secret spots.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just you and a few of our listeners. So.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Ethan, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And as a thank you for being our guest, we'd like to present you with one of our SoCo Chat coffee mugs.
Oh, excellent.
So take that. And to our listeners, we would also like to give you a chance to win one of our SoCo Chat coffee mugs. Be the first person to answer our correct answer to this week's trivia question, and we can make sure that you receive one. As we noted at the outset, our question this week is about Armstrong Woods. And the question is, what is the oldest tree in the grove, and who is it named after? If you know, please call us at 707-565-2242. Again, that's 565-2242. Or you can email us at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. And please be sure to leave your name and phone number so we can get back to you and let you know if you won. If you have any other comments or suggestions for future guests or topics for discussion, please call us at that number, 565-2242, or email us at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org and let us know your thoughts. In the meantime, we hope you continue to follow SoCo Chat on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, and for the video version on YouTube. Once again, I'm Paul Gullickson. Thank you for joining us.